when it comes to Egypt, it's a very proud nation. And to come there as a foreigner, although I've been living there for 15 years, I am still a foreigner. And I'm a woman, and I'm a foreigner. It's two bad things. I think, that you have to be and you should always be, but you should be very respectful to the country, not the dictatorship. Not to the dictatorship at all. Fuck the dictatorship. But
do you mean that as the immediate dictatorship, or are you talking about more of a conceptual dictatorship?
I'm talking about there is a real dictatorship.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the regime. But what you have to be, it's very respectful to the artists and the society. And we would never do any project that would go against the artists and their beliefs. I'm only there to facilitate things. I'm there to provide, I'm the one who can get hold of the money. I can help them to find, together with them, the venues. I can be the organizer and helping them out in that way. I have the contacts, but it's up to them to decide what they want to do. I can also help them if there is any risk at stake here, and there is. You could get arrested. You can be harassed. You can end up in jail. And but with the contacts with the Swedish embassy, I can provide that kind of assistance if anything happens. But the basic thing is to be extremely respectful to what the artists and work with the local artists. It was very sensitive to bring in a foreign artist like Carolina. She really had to prove that she was part of the project, that she was working on the same conditions, that she would not get the bigger fee or anything like that. You have to be very careful about these things. That's my experience.
Well, I haven't lived in Marrakesh or Morocco for 10 years, so for me it was a complete revelation. And I'm still a little bit in shock that we managed to bring the project forward and got it done. But the main thing for me in the project was to ask for permission. I asked everybody I could possibly ask, and I realized that this project was necessary. People were asking for it, and they wanted it to happen. In fact, whenever I spoke to anybody about it, I said, I really needed to hear those words. Can you make it happen? And in fact, one of the reasons I knew that the project was going to happen and people wanted it is that I joined the TED Talks. You have TEDx in Marrakesh, and I got to speak to a lot of local people, and I asked them indirectly, what do you think of street art, and do you think it should happen? And they started pointing me to different people who would give me help. So I immediately knew that, yeah, I think this is going to happen, and I know I'm going to have people on my side. So in some way, the answer to your question is that I had to approach it very sensitively, and I had to respect a variety of different elements that were important to people there. And if it was something that people were against, the local people, the people in the street, then we tread carefully, and if they were really against it, we just said no, that's it, we're not going to go ahead with it. We're going to do it properly. In some cases, we had to make the promise of returning the walls back to their original state, and that meant that some of the owners of walls would get their walls repaired. So there was a sort of an ulterior motive for them, but in the end, they didn't want it to be repaired. So in fact, we kind of ended up breaking that frontier. But on the other hand, I shouldn't really take a lot of credit for what we did in that sense. It's not really me. I think Morocco is now trying to establish itself as the gateway to Africa. So they are being very modern about things. And now the king has built a modern museum of art in Rabat, which is the capital of Morocco. And he's currently showing Giacometti. So this is quite an amazing step in the right direction. And immediately after we launched our project, a street art festival was launched. So there was an aftershock after what we did. So I know we were kind of in the right place at the right time.
Kind of going on that theme of the the after effects. What kind of after effects have you both seen, both positive and negative, from your projects in spaces that kind of had nothing before?
Can you repeat the question?
What kind of reactions have you had from, whether it's the state, whether it's the general public, for something that you've done that you kind of, it's memorable to you, whether it was, say, turning an abandoned swimming pool into an art space, or for yourself going into Gaza and doing that? And obviously we saw many of your negative reactions. Maybe you could tell us a few more about your personal ones.
I mean, first of all, I think the situation in the Middle East, whereas what I did in Berlin, these are two different contexts, Like,
yeah, it's going to be,
in Berlin, like, I work with people who do not ask for permission, and that is actually what makes their work relevant, where in the Middle East you simply, for security reasons, could not do that. However, I think it's, and that's what Mia said in the beginning, it's extremely important to take into consideration the community and the people who live there. At Stadtbad, we used the outside walls to paint some kinds of murals. And because, like the pool was in a part of the city which was really ghetto. And so doing murals was one way for us to involve the kids and get their mother to come back, which means then you don't have problems with the dealers and all of the kind of shit you had to deal with in that neighborhood. So regardless of whether it is legal or illegal, I think it's always important to reflect on the community that is living here, which is, I don't know if you've read the German press lately, but there's a big project in Berlin called Urban Nation, which I personally consider being the gentrification tool of the city, who flies in artists in and out to paint these big murals without even considering what are the populations living in this neighborhood and how do they feel about these big murals. And I think this is a big question now in the scene, like how do you deal with the community that is living here? What is the finality of this project? What is the goal?
This seems to be a recurring theme throughout, especially the newer project walks. They come in, they go to a kind of a rundown area, they throw a big project, and then suddenly bang, the prices are through the roof. Everybody has to move out. What do you put in place to combat that at, I guess, the different stages? As an organizer and then as a state.
I think you just can't, and that's. I haven't found yet an answer to that question. Even though, trust me, I'm really thinking about it. There is no real answer. I mean, maybe it's capitalism evil that Jordan described in the first presentation of the conference, and then I guess so far we haven't found any solution.
In fact, I do have a strange perception of the way that that's working, because in one sense you've got an ability to have creativity, so this is a place, it's a platform for creativity to exist. On the other hand, there is a benefit to a lot of property developers who are suddenly making this area worthy of their projects, which is also one thing that they have to do. But you're right, it's a bit of a conflict of interest. Like, how is it really going to work? And there isn't right and wrong, I don't think. For me, I was thinking it's about who's going to be allowed to paint what and who controls that gate, I suppose. If you allow for the community to be more involved and the local people, and you consider the local community, then I think what you're doing is actually trying to get a balance. But if it comes from one direction, and it's like, maybe perhaps that's what you were saying, that if it doesn't come with consideration of where it's happening and how it's happening, then it becomes a little bit more about decoration of a project by a developer. So we have a little bit of that issue in Croydon, where we're working with street artists to bring more art into the community. Croydon has been forgotten for many years, so suddenly there's all this attention and everybody's looking, and suddenly we've got more art. So it does raise some questions. On the other hand, I've been sitting in some of the developers meetings, and you have a gap, because there's going to be a lot of development going on, and suddenly people are being displaced, or the culture is being displaced. How do you maintain that culture alive? How do you celebrate the people locally when they've got a building site to live around? So there's lots of questions, and I don't have the answers, but something needs to be happening, and if it's something good is still happening, I think it's a good thing, personally.
So what do you sort of, with regards to Croydon, what's your relationship with the local state, essentially?
It's quite mixed. There isn't one center point, like central place where it's all coming from. So it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. The mural project was born out of a developer who said, yes, can you paint my wall? And it was quite a gutsy thing, actually. It's a very unusual man to even think like that. I think he's a bit of a leader in that sense. He's got a big building. He wants to be, he wants to be liked by lots of glossy, young buyers. On the other hand, he's throwing up a mural on it, and I thought it was quite cool. So, and the artist basically said to me, we don't really want to be working with a developer or for a developer. How can we make this more about the area rather than for some developers? So that's how we overcame that problem. We took the project away from the developer, and we gave it to the city and said, who wants to be a part of it? Let's take this to the next level. And I think sort of right now it's picking up momentum. And we're not just working with street artists, we're working with fine artists, musicians, and there's some other things that are going on, like festivals.
Sorry, just to kind of take that on again. Is there a role for the developers to play within this system? To rather than you having to say, look, no, you're not allowed to be part of it, because essentially what we're doing is allowing you to inflate prices. Is there a place for them to be more constructive within this rather than kind of, a negative side?
I haven't come across a developer saying, can you put a new mural on my brand new building yet. It's always been an old building that hasn't been glossed over yet. And, for a developer to say, come and paint a mural on my building, and then I'm going to try and sell the flats, it's not normally the way. It's usually, paint on ugly buildings, so my building will look really beautiful. So I think maybe developers can look at it as they could be more involved to offer the buildings in a different way, to give confidence to the artists, for definite. And the other element, I think what you're saying, is probably funding. It would be great to get more funding for this, because it's a sort of a difficult subject really to broach.
We definitely tried to do that, open that one up yesterday. We got loads of different opinions. I mean, how have you seen this relationship in the Middle East? Is there a problem for, are people coming from an international platform to come to Cairo or Gaza to look at your street art, and is there a local kind of stimulation for it?
I think we have other problems.
Yeah.
No, but I wanted to make a comment on what you said here about the developer. It has nothing to do with the Middle East, but we have an interesting example from another project I'm running in Sweden, Street Art Österlen, which takes place in the southeast of Sweden, where we have the developers with us. And what we are discussing with them now is to already from the very beginning include the cost for the street art on the building. And we did one last year, which was very interesting. But so I think it's possible to have that happen. Anyway, I want to say something about the thing that you were trying to ask me before, about where does this all leave us, when the project is over? Where are people standing after the project is gone? And the biggest problem today for the young artists in the Middle East is that everything that was so hot about the Arab Spring, when foreign funders and the governments were pouring out money as soon as they could spot an agent for change. That was the mantra. You are an agent for change? Wow, you can have this money. and you can paint something, or you can do music, or you can make theater, whatever, just be part of this big movement for change in the Middle East. Today, there is no Arab Spring at all. It's not even winter, it's perma-winter, whatever you can call it. So there is no interest from the foreign governments to at all be on the lookout for agents for change, because they don't want to upset the sitting dictatorship. This is what's going on. So it's extremely difficult to get any money today to promote a project like Women on Walls. It's not easy at all, because they don't want that change anymore. You see what we are dealing with? I was curious about, you have a dictatorship in Morocco too. I would like you to say something about it, because the situation now in Egypt is, what's going on now is, when we started WOW, we were thinking of the importance of, empowering women in general, to make women more visible, and I hope we succeeded in some way doing that, although it's extremely, you can't measure it. Can't measure the impact of the project. But what we could somehow measure was the impact on the individual artist who had participated. And almost all of them, I would say, got very strong from it. That was the biggest benefit from the project, that we got some very strong female artists, and it was a real push for them to continue to develop themselves. But in this situation today, it's not easy to continue. Laila is trying her way in Jordan within the regime, within the rules of the dictatorship, not stressing them, not pushing the political issues, just, keep promoting women to get the women to get some self-esteem. But for example, in Egypt, the emails I get today, or the Facebook messages from the artists in Egypt, it is, please, can you tell me, how can I get out of here? Is there any place you can take me to Sweden? We have already one artist who participated in Street Art Österlen last year. When it was time to go back to Cairo, she said, I can't go back. I'm not going back. I'm going to seek refuge in Sweden, asylum. I just can't go back. What I've been doing here is so against my family and against everything. This is the situation. This is what we are dealing with. People want to leave today.
How do you think the Western art world can play a bigger role in this? I don't want to get too into our political foreign response, but I'm talking about artistically, what can we do to help that situation?
I'm still thinking about it, I think, one thing we can do is to keep doing what we were doing, invite them for projects, for street art festivals, anything, even if you take the risk that they won't go home. But at least give them a chance to be part of the bigger community, the artistic community. Because what you need when you are stuck under these conditions that people are in the Middle East today, you need to be able to breathe. I can just give you a short example. Mona, who refused to go back to Cairo, she was like a zombie the first month, and then she started to draw again. And what she was taking out on the canvas, it was mind-blowing. I said, what is this? You have become such a better artist since you came to Sweden. And she said, it's because I finally feel I can be free. She had even though she had been out there being a street artist, a painter, she had restricted herself to such a degree that she wasn't even aware of it. But psychologically, by coming to a country where she felt she could be totally free, her full artist capacity came into light. And I think that's the least we can do. My biggest sorrow today is that I haven't during these 3 years that we've been working with Women on Walls, I've never been able to take out an artist from Gaza. It's impossible.
Would you ever consider bringing in an artist from Morocco?
We do every year a show with artists from Iran. Even though Iran is in a different state, being an artist in Iran is the worst condition you can have. You have no health insurance, for instance. And I think you also have to be very careful as how the work is presented in Europe. Like in the case of the artist we showed this year in March, she's now no longer able to travel because of a press release I wrote where I took it from a political angle because her work is extremely political. And she didn't get a visa, they took her passport. So it's very tricky because yes, we want to give them more voice and more exposure, but actually by doing this, you might put them in danger. So it's tricky. Like I said, our little contribution, like we do one show every year with this artist. You have to be careful as of which themes you play with, how the show is curated. Yeah, the first show we did with the Iranians was called Dreams, Hope and Desires, and that was totally accepted. And it had a lot of echo and a very good resonance. And then I said, okay, and you know, I like things that are a bit acid. This is, like I said, a gallery reflects the personality of its director. And I said, okay, let's push it one step more, yeah? But that was one step too much.
So did you want to add anything